Um, it's just they've been there since day one, and they're really the ones. They've been my rock, and they've been the constant.
No one expected her. Not the commentators, not the bookmakers, and certainly not the longtime followers of women's tennis. Yet there she was, a 19-year-old girl with a calm face and a racket that looked almost too light in her hands, dismantling giants on the WTA stage as if she had quietly planned this takeover for years. Her name? Alexandra Eala. And if you've never heard of her, that's exactly why this story is worth listening to. Because rising stars usually come with noise, flashy social media, dramatic headlines, glamorous sponsorships. Alexandra arrived with none of that. No scandals, no hype, no wild predictions, just a quiet intensity that felt completely out of place in modern sport. But the moment she stepped onto the court at the Miami Open, something strange began to happen. The British commentators, normally confident, suddenly sounded uncertain. Where did this girl come from? How is she doing this? She took down Elena Ostapenko, then Madison Keys. And then, in a match that felt almost symbolic, she defeated Iga Świątek, the very embodiment of the modern WTA powerhouse. It wasn't just the upset itself, but the manner of it. Alexandra didn't scream, didn't punch the air, didn't collapse to her knees. She simply tightened her headband, breathed out slowly, and walked to the net as if nothing unusual had happened. That moment sent a ripple through the tennis world. A new face, a terrifying calm, a game built on precision, not fireworks. But what no one knew, not even the commentators trying to piece together her biography on live TV, was that this young woman had already lived through a decade of sacrifice before she ever touched that Miami court. To understand why she plays with such control, why she doesn't fear the biggest names, and why she doesn't crave the spotlight, you have to trace her story backwards. Not to a European tennis academy, not to a wealthy sports family, but to a small, humid corner of Quezon City in the Philippines, where her journey began long before anyone outside her country cared. Picture this. A modest home where breakfast was served with Federer highlights playing in the background, and dinner was accompanied by discussions about Serena Williams' tactics. A mother who carried the discipline of a former SEA Games swimmer. A brother whose mantra was practically carved into the walls. 1 hour of pain is better than a year of failure. Sports in her family wasn't a choice. It was the first language. The air she breathed. The lens through which life made sense. But here's the twist. Despite the strict discipline, Alexandra was never forced into tennis. She wasn't pushed. She gravitated. As if something inside her already knew, she was meant for a world far bigger than the court she trained on. By age 6, she was practicing every day. By 7, she had a personal coach. By 8, she was beating older players with the same quiet focus you see today. Yet even this doesn't explain how a girl from a country with almost no tennis infrastructure managed to claw her way into the global stage. Something had to change. Something had to break. And at age 12, it did. In a way that would reshape the rest of her life. At 12 years old, most children are worried about homework, school crushes, or where to spend their next holiday. Alexandra Eala, however, was standing at an airport with a backpack, a racket case, and eyes that were far braver than they should have been. No parents, no teammates, no entourage, just a one-way ticket from Manila to Mallorca, and a dream heavy enough to crush anyone who wasn't built for it. The Rafa Nadal Academy sounds glamorous from the outside. In truth, it's closer to a battlefield disguised as a sports facility. It's a place where talent matters less than tolerance for pain, where mornings start before sunrise, where drills last until your arms beg for mercy, and where the line between passion and punishment becomes razor thin. It is, quite literally, the kind of place where champions are either forged or broken. When Alexandra first walked through its gates, she didn't look like the favorite. She looked like the outsider. A small, brown-skinned girl from a tropical country that no one associated with tennis. Surrounded by tall European athletes with perfect footwork and perfect English, she seemed almost out of place, except for one detail that no one noticed at first. She didn't blink. While others complained about the heat, the schedule, the monotony, she simply worked. And worked. And worked. 6 hours of training a day. Tactical sessions in Spanish she barely understood. Fitness routines that made grown teenagers cry. Nights spent doing schoolwork when she could barely keep her eyes open. In those early months, loneliness became an uninvited roommate. She had no family dinners, no Tagalog conversations, no warm Filipino humor to soften the blows of the day. The cultural shock hit her hard. She would wake up sometimes and wonder if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. But every time that doubt crept in, she would remember the small tennis court back home in Quezon City, the place where her grandfather placed a racket in her hands, where her mother taught her discipline, where her brother whispered about the value of suffering. If she gave up now, that entire foundation would crumble. Slowly the coaches began to notice. Not her power, not her speed, but her stubbornness. She didn't have natural height. She didn't have the European build. What she had was something far rarer, a refusal to break. Coach Daniel Gomez, one of the Academy's most respected mentors, once said quietly to another trainer, "She's not the most gifted here, but she's the one who will outlast everyone." And he was right. Within 18 months, she rose from being the quiet Filipino girl to the one nobody wants to face because she never gives up a single point. She learned Spanish. She learned to adapt. She learned to bleed and keep moving anyway. Most importantly, she learned that greatness isn't born. It's sculpted, carved from the parts of you that no one sees. By the time she lifted the prestigious Les Petites trophy in France, the entire academy finally understood. This girl wasn't here to survive. She was here to threaten the world. For years, Alexandra Eala trained in silence. No headlines followed her. No commentators memorized her name. She was just another junior player fighting through the unforgiving ladder of global tennis. Until the world ran out of excuses to ignore her. Her first warnings came quietly. A doubles title at the Australian Open Juniors. Another at the French Open. Impressive, yes. But still easy for the tennis establishment to dismiss as promising but not yet dangerous. Then 2022 arrived, and Alexandra delivered a message far louder than words. She won the U.S. Open Junior Singles title, beating girls backed by powerful federations, wealthier training systems, and far more media coverage. Suddenly, the experts who had overlooked her began to ask a nervous question. What happens when she turns pro? The answer came in 2025, and it was far bigger than anyone had imagined. She entered the Miami Open as a wild card, a name meant to fill a space in the draw. No expectations, no pressure. The British commentators barely mentioned her during the pre-match analysis. But then she stepped onto the court. Her style was different. She didn't blast winners like Sabalenka. She didn't sprint like Goff. She didn't showboat. She simply absorbed, redirected, and dismantled. Fans in the stadium whispered the same thing. Why does she look so calm? Why does she look like she's already 2 steps ahead? She defeated Elena Ostapenko, the former French Open champion, then Madison Keys, the American powerhouse. But it was her match against Iga Świątek, world number 2, that rewrote everything. Świątek came in with thunder. Alexandra responded with ice. She countered every heavy shot with that signature backhand. Clean, sharp, unforgiving. She refused to panic when the rallies dragged on. She refused to crumble when Iga pushed the pace. She refused to show fear, even for a second. 2 hours later, Alexandra walked off the court victorious, not with theatrics, not with tears, but with the same understated grace she's carried since childhood. The stadium rose to applaud. The commentators stumbled over their words. The WTA world map had just shifted, and everyone knew it. Brands rushed in. Nike strengthened their partnership. Babolat released a limited Eala edition racket. Vogue Philippines put her on a cover that sold out in hours. Yet the most fascinating thing was how unchanged she remained. While other rising stars splurged on luxury cars, Alexandra spent her money on nutritionists, fitness technology, and psychology courses. While others posted every detail online, she let her racket speak for her. And while rumors swirled, the curly-haired boy in the stands, the Spanish training partner, the mysterious photo at a Beverly Hills party, she refused to feed the fire. Her only comment, "Sometimes it's just a handshake." Chill. It wasn't shyness. It was control. The kind of control only someone who has endured loneliness, pressure, and scrutiny from the age of 12 could master. Now Britain was paying attention. Now every analyst who once overlooked her wanted to decode her. But the truth is this. Alexandra Eala didn't rise because the world welcomed her. She rose because she stopped waiting for permission. For all her victories, for all the headlines that now follow her, Alexandra Eala remains strangely untouched by fame. In an era where young athletes chase attention as aggressively as trophies, she moves in the opposite direction. Quieter, calmer, almost elusive. And perhaps that's what makes her so compelling. She doesn't just win matches. She unsettles people's expectations of what a modern sports star should look like. Off the court, she's almost unrecognizable compared to the intense fighter Britain watched defeat Iga Świątek. She returns to the Philippines at least twice a year, slipping into rural communities without cameras, without agents, without a PR script. There she teaches children how to grip a racket, how to breathe through pressure, how to believe in something bigger than circumstance. No interviews, no oversized sponsorship logos. Just a girl with a cap, a simple white t-shirt, and a smile that reminds everyone she hasn't forgotten where her story began. Her generosity doesn't end with tennis. She quietly supports food relief charities, funds school programs, and even participates in environmental projects. During the 2024 season, she became one of the few WTA athletes who refused single-use plastic bottles at tournaments. When reporters asked why, she didn't give a grand speech. She simply said, "I don't want the next generation playing on courts built on our waste." It's this strange blend of humility and steel that confuses people. She's too grounded for Hollywood-style fame, too disciplined for social media theatrics, too graceful for trash talk. And yet, at 19, she carries herself like someone who's seen twice as much life as her peers. So what does she want? Not fame, not fortune, not chaos? Her answer is disarmingly simple. I want kids to look at me and say, she never gave up. That kind of legacy isn't flashy. It doesn't trend on TikTok, but it lasts. Still, questions remain. The kinds of questions that make her story irresistible. Will she become the first Filipina to break into the WTA top 10? Will she claim a Grand Slam title before the age of 25? Will the world ever learn the truth behind the mysterious boy who keeps appearing courtside? And perhaps the most intriguing one, what kind of champion will she grow into when the spotlight finally becomes impossible to escape? These uncertainties don't weaken her story, they deepen it. Because Alexandra Eala isn't just a rising tennis player, she's a quiet revolution. A symbol of a new kind of athlete, disciplined, intelligent, compassionate, unbothered by noise, and driven by something far more powerful than fame. And now, the question Britain must answer is this. In a world full of loud superstars, is the future of tennis being shaped by the quietest warrior of them all? If Alexandra's journey has inspired you, if her calmness, her grit, and her refusal to break remind you of what true greatness looks like, then let your voice be part of this story. Leave a like if you believe she has the heart of a future Grand Slam champion. Comment below which match of hers shocked you the most, and subscribe for more deep cinematic stories about extraordinary athletes the world is only just beginning to notice. Because her story is far from over, and the next chapter might be the one that changes everything.